Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Virtual Plant-Based Diet Workshop. My name is Carolyn Kane, and I'm an Assistant Director of Alumni Relations here at DePaul. And I'm so glad that so many of you are able to join us this afternoon. Before we get started, I'm going to quickly review some Zoom procedures and housekeeping notes for this event. So first, I wanted to note that the video and audio of all participants has been turned off, and it's just to ensure the best possible audio video quality for our instructor today. I also like to note that live captioning will be enabled for this event, and you're able to turn these captions on and off and adjust things like the size of the text and other settings by navigating to the transcription button at the bottom of your screen. And finally, this event will be recorded and will be made available within the next few weeks on our virtual programs and events page on our website. So now I'm excited to introduce our host, Peter Mierwinski, and Peter will share his personal story and 8 years of experience following the starch-based diet and how he was able to lose significant weight, lower his blood pressure, cholesterol, and blood sugar levels, and get off and stay off of all prescription medications naturally. Peter Merwinski, a certified public accountant, spent the past 25 years serving local and global financial services companies in various management roles that included audit, human resources, and corporate accounting. Peter left the corporate world in the days of counting beans under high pressure to cooking beans in a pressure cooker. He is excited to pursue his passion of helping others see how easy and economical it is to prepare healthy, delicious plant-based meals and promote healthy living. He considers himself a starchivore and follows the guide principles of Dr. John McDougall. Peter was able to reverse his own chronic medical conditions following a starch-based diet as a result of his personal experience. Peter is eager to spread the message of better health through better eating to help us, the planet, and all future generations. Peter is not a medical doctor, but can give some advice today. So he's going to tell us how he stumbled upon this change in his life. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Peter.
Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you for inviting me to be part of your broadcast today. It's truly an honor to speak to you all, and I'm really excited and frankly happy to see the interest from the DePaul alumni community to learn about plant-based eating, focusing on a starch-based diet. So with that, I'm going to share my screen.
And I also wanted to note really quick, Peter, if you have any questions, please send them through the chat and Q&A feature below, and we will save time towards the end so that Peter can answer those questions. So if anything pops up during his presentation, just go ahead and send us a question and we'll handle it. Thanks so much, Peter.
Great, Carolyn, can you see my screen, my PowerPoint? Okay.
Yep, perfect.
Okay, wonderful. Well, like I said, thank you for inviting me in. I know it's your lunchtime, so hopefully everyone has something good to eat. When I do these presentations in person, I usually bring some good food with me because there's nothing like talking about healthy eating and having everyone just sit there and look at the delicious food on the screen. So I apologize for that, but like I said, I hope everyone has something good in front of them. As Carolyn mentioned, my name is Peter Mierwinski, and I am the Executive Director of the Community Harvest Educational Foundation. It's a local 501c3 nonprofit organization here in Chicago. And our mission is promoting better health through better eating with a focus on whole food, starch-based diet and lifestyle. We pretty much fulfill our mission through community outreach, including talks like this one, in-person meetings, hands-on cooking demonstrations and classes, and Q&As with various guests. I am certified in Dr. John McDougall's Starch Solution Program, and I'm a passionate wellness advocate, but I am not a medical doctor. I don't have any formal medical education or training. If you're inspired by my talk, please make sure to consult a doctor before making any changes to your diet or current medications you might be on. The information presented is for educational purposes, and I hope that you will enjoy the presentation, and I look forward to your questions at the end. So how did I get here? I'm probably the last person any of my friends or family thought would transition to a plant-based diet, but my motivation was health reasons. And this was probably in my early 30s when I started going to the doctor just for regular annual checkups. And the doctor started telling me that my blood pressure was elevated. And I was, in my early 30s, I didn't think much of it. But after a year or two, he then told me that I do actually have high blood pressure and he needed to start me for blood pressure. And before I knew it, and high stress corporate job, spending a lot of time in front of the computer, I started to gain weight. Unlike many of you maybe have experienced as well, as we get older, we tend to gain weight and due to demand. But I'm still being a pretty healthy person. I love to cook. Active is my thing to really make an impact on my weight or my blood pressure. I tried to eat healthy. I tried to incorporate fruits and vegetables. But I didn't know what I was doing. Went to the doctor's office. He kept asking. My doctor said, well, now not only is your blood pressure still high, I'm going to have to give you a different medication, different dosages, but you're also now pre-diabetic and you have high cholesterol. And the scale at the doctor's office was telling him that I was considered obese or close to being at the obesity kind of threshold for weight. So those were all big warning signs from a health standpoint. And he was going to put me on more pills as I was, approaching my 40s. And I was just really frustrated by the thought of having to take more medication. The blood pressure pills that I was taking up until that point were not making me feel very good. I was experiencing swelling in my legs and my ankles. I could feel my heart racing at times, especially after a big meal. And I didn't like how I was feeling. And I expressed my frustration to my doctor. He said, unfortunately, I'm going to have to give you more pills. It was his, medical professional responsibility to do that, or at least, tell me, he needed to do that. I told him I didn't like that approach, that there has to be another solution. So he knew how frustrated I was. So he basically pulled out his prescription pad and he said, look, I can either write you a prescription for more medications to help you with the cholesterol and maybe even the diabetes. He said, there's another thing you can do. And I said, okay, what's that one? Because I don't like the first one. And he said, well, you can go home and watch this documentary. And if you do what they say in that documentary, it could help you. And it could help you not only with these new conditions, but it could also help you with the blood pressure. So I said, okay, I'm going to give it a try. So he wrote down on his prescription pad the name of the documentary, Forks Over Knives. And so I went home that night after work, like a good patient, and I watched the documentary. And I can't even explain it. But the next morning when I woke up, I just had this feeling, this revelation of, I don't want to feel the way I felt for the past 10 years. And I was getting scared because my friend the week before had called me, a friend that I went to college with, and told me that he had a heart attack. He actually called me from the hospital. So I was glad to hear his voice, but at the same time, it started to feel real, like something bad could happen if I was going to continue on that trajectory. So like I said, the next morning, I told my wife that I want to give it a try, what I learned in that documentary. And, I asked her if she'd support me. I thought she was going to tell me I was going off the deep end. And she was frankly a little surprised that I wanted to do it. But she supported me. And what that involved was, in essence, getting rid of all the animal products in the house, all the meat, all the fish, seafood, and dairy products, including all the half and half we usually put in our morning coffee. But she was willing to give it a try. I don't know how long she was willing to to give it a go, but she was very patient and supportive, which I really appreciated, and it really made the transition easy. But I also didn't know what I was getting myself into, because while my doctor told me to watch the documentary, he really didn't give me any more specific information that I thought could help me do this. So I had to really research it on my own and watched a lot of YouTube videos and Googled a lot, but I kind of had a small plan developing of, some things that I could eat and, what I would do kind of from a day-to-day perspective. So I just jumped in with both feet and wanted to see what happened. And within, I would say, a week or two, I started to feel better. I noticed that my blood pressure, when I checked it at home, was starting to go down just a little bit. And I also noticed that, my clothes started to feel a little looser. So at that point in time, I had to wear, dress shirts and dress pants and a tie most days. Collars were very tight on my neck. In fact, the buttons would usually pop off. I had to keep getting new shirts with a wider neckline. But those clothes started to feel a little looser on me, and it gave me, some hope that maybe what I was doing was working. And I kept going with it. And about a month in, I started getting headaches. And it turns out when I called my doctor and told him about it, he had me check my blood pressure. And sure enough, my blood pressure was a lot lower than it's been trending. So he told me to cut those medications in half just on my own, to take half a dose. And then I would say within another month and a half after that, when I was scheduled to go in for a regular office visit, he officially checked my medication at that point, and he told me my blood pressure was normal and he was comfortable taking me off the pills. So not only did my blood pressure come down, but at that point when they did the blood work, and this is about, I would say, 3 months after I started the diet, the cholesterol levels came down to normal range, and the pre-diabetes just completely disappeared and blood sugars were in normal range. So I was really happy about all of that. But the best part too, that really made me feel good, was the fact that my weight had dropped by that point more than 30 pounds. And this was in 3 months. And when I was done with my journey, I guess 4 months in the transition, my total weight had come down almost 40 pounds. So I would call the weight loss almost a byproduct, a side effect of going onto this whole food plant-based diet, because I wasn't really watching the scale. I just knew my clothes started feeling lighter, and I was going down in size. So to lose weight was, I'll call it a wonderful side effect of this journey that I started. The other part of it is the food. So I really wanted to make sure that what I was eating was not only looked good, but tasted good. So I love to cook. I love to go out to dinners with my wife. So if I wasn't eating delicious tasting food, I wasn't interested. And, by the end of this, I discovered a whole new world, which I'll share some pictures and examples of with you. So now I'm on this mission to share the journey and the successes that I've had with the plant-based lifestyle with all of you and with my community, because I think, I knew that there wasn't any opportunity for me to learn about this when I was growing up. And even when I was a professional, I read all, the magazines, the health magazines, men's health, men's fitness, outdoor magazines that, purported to show a healthy lifestyle, but that lifestyle didn't work for me. It made me sick. And it was putting me in a position where I had to take many prescription drugs, which I knew were not ultimately addressing the underlying cause. So with that, I will advance the slides here. So I shared kind of the first few items with you already. And I'll move on to the picture so you can see what I looked like before my journey started, before going plant-based. The first picture is, I think, taken at an all-inclusive resort somewhere. So I love to eat and have a good time in the sun. But I also started to feel very lethargic and sluggish, and my weight continued to build. And you can see in the fourth picture, I was active. This was at a bike event in the city. So I wasn't a couch potato like in the second picture all the time. I was pretty active, but despite all that activity, I wasn't feeling good and the weight continued to climb. So fast forward, after going plant-based, this was, my new world, I should say. These are some of the plant-based people that influenced me in making my transition. And I had the opportunity, I was fortunate to meet many of them. The first one was with Dr. John McDougall in 2018, literally 4 months after I made my transition. So you can see the almost 40-pound weight loss there on me. And we have a few other folks in there, Dr. Hans Diehl, who's the founder of the CHIP program. In the middle is Mary McDougall, Dr. McDougall's wife. She's the chef in the kitchen, so I learned a lot from her. And down in the bottom, Dr. Neil Barnard, who's the head of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and our local celebrity plant-based cardiologist, Dr. Kim Williams. So February is Heart Health Month, and I thought I would just kind of kick this off with a few kind of staggering but real statistics that affect many of us, and if not personally, it affects our maybe close family members and friends. But heart disease is the leading cause of death in the US, and it affects everybody. It doesn't discriminate. It touches everyone, all people, and across many age groups. And one person dies every 36 seconds, which is hard to believe. Almost 1 in every 4 deaths are due to heart disease. This is taken from the CDC's statistics. So what does the CDC say are the conditions that increase the risk of heart disease? Well, they're pretty much all the conditions that I had. High blood pressure, unhealthy blood cholesterol levels. And what the CDC points out is that cholesterol is actually made by our bodies. So the liver makes enough for our body. So we really don't need any extra cholesterol, but many of us get cholesterol through certain foods. And those foods are animal products, whether it's meat, fish, dairy. Plants and plant foods do not have any cholesterol. Diabetes, again, glucose is what our body needs for sugar. And one of the myths is that eating sugar causes diabetes, and that's a myth. Sugar and elevated blood sugars are the result of our diet, and our insulin, in essence, gets paralyzed and can't deliver the sugar into our cells to be used for energy. And that, again, is due to diet, and the high-fat diet paralyzes insulin and clogs up those receptor cells for insulin to do its job. Obesity, again, I was obese. I weighed over 200 pounds at my highest weight. And so I was clinically diagnosed as being obese at that point for my height. And obesity is linked to higher cholesterol levels, higher bad cholesterol levels, and triglycerides. And this is connected to high blood pressure, diabetes, as well as heart disease. So I had all 4 conditions, which made me a prime candidate as I was approaching 40 for a heart attack, just like my friend had suffered. The CDC goes on to say that eating a diet high in saturated fats, trans fats, and cholesterol has been linked to heart disease and related conditions. So again, those items in yellow there and bold are all items that are found in the standard American diet. Also, not getting enough physical activity, drinking too much alcohol, and tobacco are additional risk factors. So how does this apply to food? Well, the foods that are high in fiber, plant foods, contain no cholesterol and are very, very low in saturated fat, and most don't have any. There's some trace amounts of fat, the fats that we need, but not to the same level like we see in animal foods. And unhealthy red meats, poultry, fish, eggs, and dairy products are not only high in cholesterol, they lack fiber and are all high in saturated fish. So this leaves us, the public, to decide and determine, based on this information, what food choices we're going to make. So when we talk about plant-based eating or just diets in general, there are so many terms out there and it's so confusing. I literally had no idea when I was starting this what most of these meant. So I went on a journey. I read every book I could get my hands on and watched many documentaries and listened to podcasts to get my arms around this. What was I supposed to eat? So I knew I was eating the standard American diet. I knew people who were doing the low carb, high protein, Atkins and keto thing. There are some folks that, eat fish as kind of their primary source of calories. Then, they have the Mediterranean diet, which has, some olive oils and other things that are being added to it, and the Pegan diet by Dr. Mark Hyman. So those I kind of always thought were connected to the way I was already sort of eating. And I wanted to, really look into what the Forks Over Knives documentary shared, which was a whole food plant-based diet. But even within that world, and below the red line are some of the plant-based diets, I'll call them. So you start with vegetarian, which includes maybe a little bit more, while it's plant focused, many vegetarians eat dairy and some even eat eggs. Nutritarian from Dr. Mark Furman goes through it, and he has a focus on nutrient dense plants, and that's also good, but I was still struggling with what I needed to eat to feel satisfied. So then you get down to vegan and plant forward and plant-based, and vegan sounded good, and I heard a lot about it, but I also knew that there were a lot of vegans who were not healthy. So you can drink sugary colas, eat Oreo cookies and potato chips and French fries and still be vegan, and that was not the direction I wanted to go. Then you go down to plant forward and plant-based, which I've also learned includes a lot of animal products in some cases, some dairy, and trace amounts of other animal foods. Getting down to whole food plant-based, no oil, and whole food starch-based. Which one is best? So it really depends on what your objectives are and what your motivation is. For me, it was changing my health around. That was number one. And I wanted to eat the foods that were going to help me get there. And I wanted to do it rather quickly. So I was kind of in a hurry, but I was also patient because I really wanted to lay the foundation for a new lifestyle that I could sustain long-term if it worked. I was still skeptical at the time, but I kept learning, and I spent the last 8 years really trying to increase my knowledge on the topic. So this slide compares the, three plant-based versus vegan, dietary approaches. So the vegan diet, like I mentioned, doesn't contain any animal products whatsoever. The plant-based diet sometimes includes it, generally avoids it, but I've seen people who say that they're plant-based, and even several authors and doctors talk about a plant-based diet, but still includes some of those foods occasionally. The plant-based diet also includes highly processed foods, so a lot of refined flours and white rices and sweeteners, whereas a whole food plant-based diet generally avoids those. But what they do have in common is that they all include whole grains, fruits, veggies, and starchy veggies, as well as non-starchy veggies and legumes. So why do the whole food plant-based approach, which is the one that I decided to go with? Well, I did it for my health, but it also has really positive implications and benefits for the planet and animal welfare. If you decide to do this, I will tell you that if you apply the principles that I'll share with you within just a week of eating whole food, plant-based, no oil, you're going to start to lose weight, to notice a significant increase in your energy levels and your physical strength. My wife, when I started this, would actually tell me to go to the gym, so I'd go work out at the Ray. She would kick me out of the house and say, "You have too much energy. Go out and use that energy at the gym. You're going to sleep better." And I think some of that has to do with kind of having a lower level of fat in the blood, allows the blood to deliver oxygen a little bit better. You have a clearer mind. You use up your energy more during the day. You get outside more. You sleep better, and it improves your mood. And as I shared with you, cholesterol levels start to decline and blood pressure drops. And that's a direct result of not only putting the good food in your body that is health promoting, but also avoiding or significantly limiting the animal foods that you're eating that have the high fat and cholesterol content in them. You're also going to save money. So I didn't really think about this. I thought eating plant-based was expensive. I never shopped at Whole Foods before, and I just really didn't want to shop there because I knew it was expensive. But I shopped at places like Aldi and Jewel and Trader Joe's, and I could find what I needed. And occasionally I go to Whole Foods to find a few products. But in general, you're going to save, I would say, anywhere from 50 to 75% of your food bill. And that sounds like a really big number, but it's true. I think some days I probably don't spend more than $3 or $4 on the food that I eat if I'm just eating at home and it's just me. You can obviously spend a lot of money eating whole food plant-based, but you don't have to. So there's a pretty wide range. You can stick with rice and beans and greens and some fruits. Or you can go kind of, eating more exotic things and spend more money. You're also going to see improvement in your gut health, and you're going to have regular bowel movements. So sorry to talk about it, but it's important. And you're going to have bowel movements like you've never had before from eating a high fiber diet full of all of the plant materials. And it's I would say pretty common to have 2 to 3 bowel movements a day when you're eating whole food plant-based. And most importantly, you're going to look and feel great. And it's a byproduct of eating this way. You don't really think about it. You're just going to physically change, and you're going to get lighter. You're going to get healthier. You're going to get energetic. People at work, when I did this, saw the changes that I was going through, and they had questions they were afraid to ask. They thought maybe I was sick, why I was losing weight like I was. They saw me eating, big portions of food, huge bowls full of, potatoes, rice, beans, greens. So they couldn't quite understand how I could be eating so much and still be losing weight. So that, once I explained to them, they understood, but it also made me feel good that they were noticing the physical changes, because it was helping me get healthy at the same time. So I'm not trying to convert anyone to do this. It's your decision, but I can tell you, the more you do on this kind of whole food plant-based lifestyle, the better your results personally, when your health and your appearance are going to be. You can start slowly. I ate the standard American diet for 40 years. I didn't have to change it in 4 months. It's just what I felt compelled to do. The more I started doing it, I liked how I felt, and I kept going with it. So what does whole food even mean? Colin Campbell, who's pretty well respected and now retired nutrition scientist from Cornell University, says that the ideal human diet revolves around consuming whole plant-based foods in as forms as close to their natural state as possible, eating a variety of vegetables, fruits, raw nuts and seeds, beans and legumes and grains. So not just picking one, but having a very diverse diet. And finding those things that you like. So you may not like brown rice, so don't eat it. Maybe you like quinoa, maybe you like barley, maybe you like amaranth. Eat those things that you like. If you don't like russet potatoes, eat sweet potatoes. So according to Dr. John McDougall, in the research that he's done, all large successful populations through all of verifiable human history have eaten starches as part of the core of their diet. And I know this might be a little hard to see, but if we look in the Americas, we have, corn and potatoes. Moving east, we have, millet and sorghum in Africa. The Middle East is known as the breadbasket of the world, with oats and wheat and barley. And then all the way over to the right in Asia, Asia is known for its rice, and Asians have eaten rice for more than 10,000 years. And rice, really up until the 1980s, made up at least, close to 80% of the diet. So starch. Starch is referred to commonly as complex carbohydrates. I didn't really think about starches before. I heard complex carbohydrates, but then again, what's a complex carbohydrates? You can't really grow one in your backyard, but you can grow starches. Starches should be our primary source of digestible carbohydrates. So they keep us full and satisfied. And that's important when you're eating. Nothing worse than finishing a bowl or a plate and being hungry and not having enough to eat, or having to restrict and limit your portion size. I never like to do that. Plants use water, carbon dioxide, and energy from the sun to form what's called glucose through a process of photosynthesis. Plants then store their energy as starch. And this is basically just taking that glucose, and the plant through a various photosynthesis process and another process combines these chains of glucose, links them together, and forms these starch granules. Now, when we eat these starches, the enzyme amylase in our saliva and further down in our intestine breaks down these long chains back into simple sugars through our digestion. And by eating these starches, we're able to get a slow release of these sugars into our bloodstream, which gives us kind of that steady energy release throughout the day, which I like, because I can eat a bowl of oatmeal with some berries and bananas in the morning and really not be hungry till 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon some days. Glucose is the primary source of energy for every cell in the body. And the brain, believe it or not, is the most energy demanding organ, and it uses almost 50% of the sugar energy that we have in our bodies. So we have to give it what it needs. Starches, which are made by the plants, are their storage organs, and this energy is stored in their leaves, the stems, the flowers, seeds, roots, and fruits of the plants. It includes everything from whole grains like rice and corn to flours made of whole wheat and pastas made from them, tubers, which what we call potatoes and yams, and other underground storage organs, and legumes, beans and peas and lentils. Winter squashes, which we don't eat a whole lot of in this country, contain large quantities of complex carbohydrates also, and collectively, all of these are known as starches. What about fruits? Well, fruits contain more than 90% of their carbohydrate in the form of glucose and fructose, simple sugars that when we eat them, we tend to use that energy up first. So we call that a quick burning energy. Now you can eat a lot of fruits, but it's not going to satisfy your appetite for very long if you just eat fruits alone. Green, yellow, and other vegetables store most of the calories as complex carbs, but as you're going to see in another slide, they have very few calories. So are starches enough to eat? Well, they contain enough calories not only to meet our energy requirements, and I'm pretty active, but they're also complete in the sense that they contain all the essential amino acids, our essential fats that we need to eat in the form of food, fiber, as I mentioned, as well as various minerals and antioxidants that our body will kind of take as it needs. From an activity perspective, or you're thinking maybe from a performance perspective, marathon runners and lots of endurance athletes eat plenty of complex carbs before they compete. Why? Because it works. You can have enough energy to, whether it's working out at the Ray or powering through a late night of studying or, long night at the office. As a kind of a society, Americans eat way too few calories from carbohydrates, and I'll say complex carbohydrates or starches. Most of the calories that are consumed here are heavily processed and considered empty calories. Some of you may be thinking, but wait, I thought starches are bad and eating carbs makes you fat. And I'm here to tell you that it's all a myth. Eating excess starch and carbohydrates does not easily turn to body fat. There are several published scientific research studies that confirm this. I'm not going to go into those today, but scientists all agree that carbs and starches do not easily turn to fat. If you eat more than you need in any given day, you're going to store some of that in your muscles and liver in the form of glycogen, and the rest of it's going to be burned off by your body as heat or through some physical movement or even fidgeting. Your body does not want to have to go through the process of trying to convert excess energy into fat. And I remember my wife, especially at the kind of beginning when I was eating a ton of starches, she would say, wow, your body just feels hot, like you're radiating heat. And that was my body literally burning off the excess calories I was eating because I was eating a lot. And that process of turning sugar into fat is called de novo lipogenesis. So can your body do it? It can. Certain animals do it, like pigs and cows, they do it more efficiently. Humans, unfortunately, are not efficient at it. And it takes 30% of the calories we consume to convert those calories into, or that energy into fat. So we just don't do it. Body would rather just you know, go out and be active. So what's for lunch? I'll call it, the picture on the left is the standard American diet. And on the standard American diet, animal food is usually the center of the meal. So what's for dinner? Chicken, fish, pork chops. 63% of the calories, though, come from processed foods, refined grains, flours, sugars, oils. Oil is a big source of calories, and only 12% from plant foods. And half of the plant foods that are eaten are in the form of, fried, greasy plant foods. And I think I read that 6% or half of those calories on average come from French fries. So coming over to the right-hand side, we have a whole food plant-based kind of example, no added oil, starch-based diet. Bulk of the plate is made up of starch. You can start with maybe 50% and work it up to, all the way up to 90%, maybe when you're starting out. Again, to feel that satiety factor from eating those starches. And the rest, you can fill it with non-starchy green, yellow, and red vegetables and some fruits, and water is the preferred beverage of choice. Calorie density is a really, really important concept that helps us understand why eating whole food plant-based and starches are important in restoring our health. So 500 calories consumed of food, starting over on the left. If it's just oil has 120 calories per tablespoon, and it's mostly all fat. And as you can see, 500 calories doesn't really fill up our stomach very much. We move over kind of to the right. Cheese, a little bit more. Cheese is 70% fat calories. Meat, maybe a little bit more in terms of volume in our stomach. When we get to potatoes, rice, and beans, these are what's called the wet starches because they're combined with fiber and water, and there's more bulk. More bulk will fill up a bigger space, and our receptor cells in our stomachs are going to recognize the bulk, the weight, the nutrient density of those foods, and it's going to tell our brain, hey, we're getting full. This is good stuff. And we're going to get more food for fewer calories. And then finally, fruits and veggies being the least calorically dense, you can see you'll fill up your entire stomach for 500 calories. The benefits of going plant-based: no counting, weighing, measuring, or restricting. You can eat ad libitum. Ad libitum means as much as you want without making yourself ill or uncomfortable. And it all comes down to the food. How do we measure calories? So I don't count calories, like I kind of said on the slide right before, but just to give you some perspective. So there are 4 main macronutrients present in food: carbohydrates, fat, protein, and water. Water obviously doesn't have any calories, but carbohydrates and protein both have 4 calories per gram. So they have the same amount of calories per gram. Fat, on the other hand, has more than twice as many calories at 9 calories per gram. So you can see by eating these carbohydrates, which also have, the starch in the starch form, along with protein, we're eating lower calorically dense food. Fiber has absolutely no calories. So when we're eating starches are full of fiber, bulk without any calories. So they pass through our digestion, they feed our gut bacteria. Our gut bacteria love them. That's where our immune system lives, and we use it to stay healthy. Here's another visual of caloric density of food. So everything above the green line, you can eat, I'll call it ad libitum again. So you're eating foods that have less than 600 calories per pound. These are cooked in the cooked form. Everything kind of below the green line and the red avoid limit becomes more calorically dense. So avocados are very high in calories. So if you're trying to lose weight and decrease the amount of fat in your blood, we have to limit the amount that we're eating. And as you can see, going down into the breads, the bagels, the dry cereals, the popcorn, those are dry starches and more refined. So the further down in this chart we go, the higher the caloric density. And you can see oil is the highest calorically dense food product that exists on the planet at 4,000 calories a pound. So that's one of the main reasons we avoid it. Also coupled with the fact that it's fat, we store that fat and there's really no nutrition in it. Okay, you're probably thinking, all this talk about food has me hungry. What do we eat? Starches. So I'm going to show you a few examples of this delicious food. So like I said, it has to look good in order for me to eat it, and it has to fill my stomach up so that I'm satisfied. These are from my Instagram page, a few examples. You can see the starch-based focus. So in the center is my favorite thing to eat, which is mashed potatoes. I cook those up in the Instant Pot and I make a mushroom gravy that has no added fat in it, with some green peas. But the variety of foods that you can eat on a whole food plant-based diet are incredible. It's not just salads and steamed vegetables. You're eating bean chilies, you're eating rice and bean jambalaya, you're eating some pastas with plant-based sauces on them, cheese sauces, mushroom stroganoff, potatoes, tacos with jackfruit, some creamy risottos, nachos or patachos made with potatoes and plant-based cheeses, sauces. So lots of delicious food. You will never be hungry, and a new culinary world to explore awaits. So we talked about fiber. Fiber is only present in plant foods, and it's only made by plants. There's absolutely not a speck of fiber in any animal products like beef, pork, chicken, cheese, eggs. The problem that many face is that they eat too few fiber, too little fiber in their diet. So the average American eats only 13 grams of fiber. People following this starch-based, plant-based way of eating get many multiples of that, up to even sometimes 100 grams a day. And as we talked earlier, related to heart disease, soluble fibers have been shown to lower bad cholesterol levels, and the fiber binds to acids, bile acids in the intestine, and you eliminate it. So those are made from cholesterol, and it helps remove cholesterol from the body. And the fiber is an important fuel source for our immune system. Up to 80% of our immune system lives in our gut. And when we feed our gut the fiber and the fiber-rich foods, we are going to help restore our health. So the takeaway is to eat delicious foods that are high in fiber, plants, contain no cholesterol, and are low in saturated fats. This is just a slide which shows the variety of fiber in various plant foods. So all plant foods have them to varying degrees. Okay, so I'll just talk about starch, but what about protein? Where do you get your protein? Are you getting enough protein? The biggest and strongest animals on the planet thrive on eating plant foods. And down at the bottom, there's a little picture of Patrick Babumi. He was the strongest man in the world. He's completely plant-based. He was featured in the documentary The Game Changers, so you should check that out. And he's really funny guy. They asked him, somebody said, "Hey Patrick, you're the strongest man and you're as strong as an ox, but you don't eat any meat. How is that even possible?" And he said, "Well, have you ever seen an ox eat meat?" So that quote has always stayed with me. So if he doesn't need to eat meat or dairy, then I sure as heck don't need to. So we have a protein obsession here in the US. And part of that protein obsession is due to unique positioning. And it's a marketing term. So when you think protein, what comes to mind? Usually some form of meat, right? When you think of calcium, what do you think of? You think of dairy. When you think of omega-3s, you think of fish. Comes from the Greek word protos, which means first. So everyone kind of places an importance on that as being kind of the primary, nutritional component to focus on. You need it. It's critical for building muscle and making hair, blood, tissues, enzymes, and more. But how much do we really need? I mean, I don't know how much we need. Does anybody track how much protein they're eating? Turns out a lot of athletes don't even track their protein. They just eat. So as long as you're eating enough calories during the day and eating a variety of plant foods, you're going to get enough protein. If you're more active and you're working out, you're just going to need to eat more food. So David Carter, who played for the Chicago Bears, he's known as the 300-pound vegan at one point. Somebody asked him in the Q&A at the end of the talk, "Hey David, how do you get so big from eating just plants?" And he said he ate rice, beans, and greens. And he said, "I just eat a lot of those things." So just up your portion size and you're going to get what you need. The RDA is 0.8 grams per kilo of body weight. And there's a formula for doing that. But I can tell you, in the 8 years I've been doing it, or even the almost 50 years I've been alive, I've never tracked how much protein I eat in any given period of time. Here's a chart of protein and the human body and some of the various diets. So at the time of the fastest growth in human developments at the infant stage, mother's milk, breast milk, has up to 6% of its calories in the form of protein. So only 6% of calories come from protein. And when you look to a starch-based diet, by eating whole food plants and starches, you're going to get anywhere from 7 to 15% of your calories in the form of protein. Things like greens have 3%, and oats go all the way up to like 15%, and beans are even more. Looking at the Atkins diet down at the bottom, low carb, high protein, people on that diet are eating up to 70% of their daily calories in the form of protein. Now, is all that protein good for you? It really isn't. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Here's a little chart that compares animal foods up top and plant foods at the bottom, just a few examples. And you can see the amount of protein as a percentage that you're getting in each one of those categories. So on the animal foods, on average across those four, it's 35% of calories from protein. On the plant food side, the average is only 13% of calories from protein. Looking down at fat, you could see plant foods have on average 4% of calories as fat for these four, and up on the animal food side, up to 61% on average of calories are coming from fat. Plant foods have zero cholesterol, so zeros on that line. And methionine, which is a sulfur-containing amino acid, which is harmful to our bodies, turns into sulfuric acid, is significantly higher on the animal food side versus plant food. And dietary acid, again, we want to maintain an alkaline kind of state in the body, in our body. If it's eating too many dietary acids, which you can see those higher numbers on the animal food side, our body's going to try to offset that acidic state by neutralizing those acids. And how it does that is by leaching calcium from the bones and taking bicarbonate material in order to neutralize those acids. And over time, that weakens the bones and leads to osteoporosis, among other potential diseases. Okay, I'm going to go quickly here through the rest of the slides. So protein is used as a last resort by the body, and their proteins are found in all foods. And our bodies can make most of them, but only 8 of the 22 amino acids are essential and only found in food, and we need to eat those. We talked about eating enough calories to maintain a weight and getting enough protein, and eating minimally processed whole natural foods. There are no cases of protein deficiency in this country if people are eating enough calories. So that's one of the myths too. Am I going to be deficient going on plant-based? No, you're not going to be deficient. That doesn't even exist. Nobody's heard of protein deficiency. But when we eat too much protein, it can be really harmful to our bodies. Calcium, another important element. Where do you get your calcium? Is a question that comes up when you go plant-based. But do you know anyone who is calcium deficient? I don't know anyone. It doesn't exist in our country. Again, if people are eating enough food and calories sufficient. Calcium comes from the earth, it comes from dirt, not cows. The body doesn't even produce it. Animals don't produce it. They eat the grass and they eat the grains and they eat the feed, and that's how they get their calcium. It's an element that's neither created nor destroyed. Plants absorb the calcium and it comes up through the roots, and we need calcium, but we also just need to eat the right foods. So the largest animals on the planet, they don't eat any animal or dairy foods whatsoever. You know, when they're mature in mature states, they eat the plants. You'll get plenty of it, don't worry. One of the last topics I'll talk about is oil. We avoid oil. Why? Because it has 120 calories per tablespoon. If you ate 1 tablespoon a day, each day for the course of the year, that's 43,800 calories. 1 pound of fat is 3,500 calories. Guess what? 1 tablespoon a day translates to almost 12.5 pounds of fat just from 1 tablespoon. And oil is hidden in many processed foods. So you have to really read the labels, and I avoid any products that have any added fats in it. It's also really dangerous when you're dining out, and make sure you ask questions and try to not put as much or very little if possible. We talked about fat. I'm going to just kind of skip over this and kind of get to more of the conclusion because we're running out of time. I'm sorry. So how do you do this? What do you do? How do you go about it? First, make sure you talk to your doctor, especially if you're on medications, because it could affect your levels. And take it slow. Focus on 1 meal at a time. When you're planning your menus, make a calendar and try to drop, some new foods in there, some new starches, and add more starches just into your existing meals versus going all in if you want. Eat more starch challenge. Just add a scoop or 2 of rice, add a scoop or 2 of beans, add some potatoes. Daily habits. What are you doing every day to kind of change your habits around shopping, cooking, eating, snacking, dining out, seeing friends? Your environment is one of the most important things to be successful on this lifestyle. Try to remove the foods from your environment. If you have them in your house, you're going to eat them. It's really hard to stay moderate and to only eat a little bit. Preparation is key. I would batch cook on Sundays when I was working long hours and make big soups, make a pot of potatoes, make a pot of rice, make a pot of beans and stick them in the fridge or put them in the freezer. So when I was going to work, I could just grab some and take it to go. Maybe mix it with a can of soup or some frozen greens. Keep it simple. You don't have to make it fancy with 27 recipes. I probably eat the 5 or 6 kind of similar meals every day, and find a support system, friends, family meetups, YouTube or other social media. That's what I did. I didn't know anybody that was doing this, so I had to kind of figure it out on my own, and that was really helpful. And don't worry about your weight if that's one of your motivations for doing this. It's the food. Put your attention on the food that you're eating, and the weight and all the other health promoting aspects of the diet will just work magically, I promise. Here's some resources for you to consider. Forks Over Knives, I would highly recommend that. Came out over 10 years ago. It's actually streaming free on their website, forksoverknives.com. And What the Health is another good one, and Game Changers, which follows athletes and maybe appeals to a lot of guys and people who are athletic and worried about going plant-based and how that might affect their physical performance. A few websites, Dr. McDougall's website, which I would highly recommend, lots of free recipes, and it'll tell you all about the starch-based program. It's free. There's no, you can sign up for his week-long seminars, but you don't have to. Everything is made available free, and same thing with nutritionfacts.org, Dr. Greger's website. Number of YouTube channels that have helped me, and I still watch them from time to time. They may help you as well. So are you ready? You can do this. We're here to support you. Reach out anytime. You can contact me at the email address there, petermerwinski@gmail. Check out the work my nonprofit is doing, chefillinois.org. We're also on Instagram, so I tend to post a lot there, so you can find the latest happenings. And with that, I know we kind of ran out of time, but I can stay a little bit longer. So if you all can, I'll stick around so that we can try to answer as many questions as we can.
Peter, thank you so much for this. This was a lot of information.
I know, sorry, I went quickly. I tried to share as much as I could in the hour, so this running a little long.
This is great. And I mean, first, so we did have questions come through the chat, but first I wanted to thank you for delivering all of this information to us. And then I wanted to thank everyone for joining this webinar today. Again, it is recorded. I know that some people, if you are on lunch, or will be courteous of your time, but Peter is gracious enough to answer a few of these questions that came through. So if you have to leave, we totally understand, and we thank you again for coming out today. Peter, without further ado, I'll go ahead and ask some of the questions that came through today.
Sure.
So the first question, someone wanted to know, are you buying organic food when you mentioned saving money on groceries?
So that's a good question. You can find some sales on organic foods. So if you can afford organic foods, I would recommend eating as many organic foods as you can. Organic food is better than non-organic because you're going to be getting fewer chemicals and cleaner, and in my opinion, even tastier fruits and veggies. And part of eating this way is to eat things that taste great. And so I found that the organic fruits and vegetables in many cases just taste better. And it's all about the taste, because we want our taste buds to recognize those foods and to crave those foods and taste those sugars, and get those extra maybe vitamins and minerals and antioxidants that maybe would be more available in some of the organic foods, but you don't have to. So when I was starting out, I didn't focus on organic at all. And it doesn't matter what you eat. It's better than eating some of the foods on the standard American diet. Just my suggestion would be just eat any vegetables, any fruits and vegetables you can get your hands on, whether they're organic or not. And frozen also versus canned or fresh. Again, sometimes even the frozen vegetables are more convenient, but sometimes they're even fresher and they have more nutrient quality associated with them.
Okay. Any recommendations of store-bought salad? Prefer oil-free. They said they know making their own would be better, but let's say they don't necessarily have time, if they're a working parent. So do you have any recommendations for like the store-bought salad?
Store-bought salads? Yeah, as long as it's just the salad. So I know a lot of those packages have all these little extra bits of things in them, croutons and, sugar oil-coated nuts and other unrecognizable, crunchy, fried little bits of things. So if I do buy a salad bag like that, I usually throw that little packet out, and as well as the dressings, because the dressings are going to be loaded with dairy and refined oils. So throw that out, make your own. You could use make a 3-2-1 dressing, as I call it. It's 3 parts mustard, use any mustard, 2 parts vinegar. You can use balsamic, apple cider, and 1 part sweetener. If you want, you can use like a maple syrup or an agave, or you can just avoid it, and a little extra water to thin it out, shake it up, and you got a nice, healthy, easy dressing. But I usually buy the clamshell, mixed greens. I'll buy the romaine heads. I like to buy things at Costco in bulk. So those are usually kind of my go-tos. But again, any greens that you can get a hold of, I would say go for it.
Okay. What are your thoughts on green smoothies and flax oils?
I heard smoothies and flax oil. What was the first one?
Green smoothies.
Oh, green smoothies. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so when it comes to smoothies, I used to make smoothies all the time. And it was, I would say, before I went plant-based. What I found is when I ate smoothies, I was able to get some of the nutrition, right, from the fruits primarily that I was consuming. But what you end up doing is breaking down the fibers in those fruits and vegetables by hitting it with a blade a million times at high speed. And so by breaking down those fibers, you're going to increase the caloric density of that smoothie as compared to eating those same fruits and vegetables whole. So when you think about it, like I could easily whip up a smoothie with 5 bananas, half a carton of strawberries, a handful of blueberries, and half a bag of greens, and put it in my blender and drink it in 5 minutes. But for you to eat those same foods, I mean, you may not even be able to eat them. Like to eat 5 bananas and half a carton of strawberries, let alone the greens and the other things. Again, it comes down to bulk and fiber, and those are really important things because we get satiety from eating those. It fills up our stomach, and it becomes a little bit slower of a release. When you make a smoothie or juice, juicing is also really popular. People ask me about that. Those sugars in the juice, so you've eliminated a lot of the fiber, and those sugars really hit your bloodstream very quickly. So I'll still have a smoothie or a juice from time to time, but if I'm maybe going biking or, I'm very active, or maybe going to the gym or on a big hike, I'll take it with me because I want that immediate energy, but also know that it's better to eat the whole foods as opposed to eating them in kind of liquid form.
Okay. And someone wanted to know, what about B12 since you're not eating meat?
Yep, B12 is important, and it's important not just for plant-based eaters, but it's also important for those on the standard American diet because just like vitamin D deficiency, it affects everyone with B12 deficiency, I should say. And what I also learned is that when you're eating the standard American diet and eating the animal foods, a lot of the livestock are also injected with B12, so they're not able to get it from the ground. So that's where B12 comes from. It comes from the earth, from the soil, and from the plants. So I take a supplement once in a while. It's just something I do. I don't worry about it. It takes a very long time for that to work itself out of your body and to become deficient, but it's real and it's important. So you can check with your doctor or get some advice as to how much to take, but then the needs for the amount you have to take are very small.
Okay, and last 2 questions. Well, the first one, how does this work when you have IBS and or SIBO?
Irritable bowel syndrome, and I don't know what SIBO.
I wasn't too sure of that one either, but I guess
those are good questions, and I would say check with your doctor first if you have a specific medical condition. But from a general perspective, when you stop eating the foods that cause inflammation and cause leaky gut, and start putting fiber-rich foods and nutrient-dense foods and the starches, your body starts to heal itself, and there could be some positive benefits to some of those conditions. But check with your doctor.
Perfect. And last question: what about nut milk, like almond or coconut milk?
Yes, great question. I love nut milks. I love almond milk. My suggestion, or I guess something I would ask you to just look for when you buy those, is to read the labels, because almond milk can be good, and it can be low calorie almond milk. But there's also unhealthy almond milk in the store, on the shelves. So the unhealthy almond milks and plant milks in general, I'll say, are the ones with added oils. Now, why they're putting oil in plant milks, I have absolutely no idea, but read the label, because many of them have added oil. It might be a texture thing, but if in doubt, you could always make your own plant milks at home. All you need are some almonds, some clean water, and a little straining bag, and a high-speed blender. You just blend them up. You can actually do that with almond butter. So a friend of mine told me about this, but you can take a scoop of almond butter and put it in your blender with some water. And I don't have the exact proportions of it, but a scoop or two of almond butter, fill it up with water, and turn your blender on. And you blend it up, and you're gonna have almond milk without any extra added oil, assuming your almonds that you bought aren't filled with added oils. But that's a great quick hack if you're having trouble finding oil-free nut milks, but they sell healthy versions of it even at Aldi. I saw those at the store the other day. So I definitely love those. Soy milk is something that I just love. I love the texture of soy milk. It's a little higher fat. It's good fat. It's plant fat. So I love the mouthfeel of it, because I used to put half and half in my coffee every morning. And I found that soy milk, whether it's plain or vanilla, flavored, gives you that richness, for me at least, that mouthfeel that I was missing and craving with my morning coffee.
Oh, well, thanks for those hacks at the end.
Sure. I have lots more if anyone's interested. Just let me know.
Again, Peter, we want to thank you so much for this lovely presentation today. I mean, I'm sure speak for everybody on here that we learned a lot. Again, I was telling you that these are all things, questions running through our minds, and we want to get started and keep it going. That's the thing. So I appreciate this, as I'm sure everyone else.
Wonderful.
And someone asked about ghee butter. Do you know? Okay. I'm not sure. The question popped up in the chat when you said
ghee butter. Sorry. I'm seeing the chat now. I saw the Q&A, and then I see the chat. Ghee butter. So ghee butter is like a clarified butter. That's a dairy product. So we would not include that in this way of eating. Yep. So we would eliminate butters, but that's a good question as far as butters in general, because what about plant-based butters? There are vegan butters, things that say plant-based on them. Yeah, avoid those too, because those are 100% oil. So it's just oil that's been gone through a process to solidify it. And even though it looks like a dairy butter, it is pure fat, and it is not going to help our arteries. It's not going to help with heart disease. It's not going to help with diabetes, and it's not going to help us achieve our ideal weight. So no reason to include it. Other substitutions you can make. So I would eliminate that.
See, thank you for that last minute save.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's anything else.
Yeah, if we missed anything, but.
Someone who's transitioning slowly to a plant-based diet. Yeah, it's just literally one meal, one bowl, one plate at a time. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Try new foods, try the things, and eat those things that you like. Like I said, if you don't like certain foods, don't eat them. Eat other things that taste good, and continue to eat them. And over time, just try to add a little bit more, and see how you feel. And I hope that you use your energy level and your overall, feeling of well-being as your driver for continuing on this lifestyle, because once you start it, your body is going to tell you that it just wants more. And it takes, I'll say, maybe 10 days, 2 weeks for that to happen. So if you put it into perspective in context, I mean, I went 40 years eating the standard American diet. To think that within just a couple weeks or a month, my body can start to change and start healing itself after 40 years of eating the other stuff, it's pretty remarkable that can happen. So go slowly, be good to yourself, and let your body work its magic. It's going to. You don't even have to think about it. Just focus on the food and what you eat, and make sure it tastes good, that you like it.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much again to you, Peter, and to everybody on the call today. And I hope that we answered all of your questions. Again, this is recorded, so this will be made available within the next couple of weeks. And I hope to see you all at future events. Thanks again, everybody.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, take care.